So before I jump in and share my screen and share my PowerPoint with all of you, what I want to do is really encourage you guys to stop me, ask questions, ask for clarification as we go. If I don't know the answer to a question, I'll jot it down and I'll send you the information after the session. I also wanted to highlight before we start that I'm working in a version of PowerPoint that is Office 365. That is their latest and greatest version, but you might be in an older version. Things might look a little bit different, but for the most part, things are similar enough that you'll be able to find your way is my feeling. But if not, just go ahead and ask me a question. I'm also working in or on a Windows PC. So if you're on a Mac, there might be some differences there as well. But ask for clarification if I'm not sure. Joe might be able to help because Joe works on a Mac, and I could always research for you and get back to you after the session. All right, does anybody have any questions up front before we start? All righty, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And for some reason, it wasn't responding. That was a little unnerving.
Lisa, I do have a quick question.
Yes.
The commands in Google Slides are very similar to PowerPoint. So whatever we learn about PowerPoint, we can just transfer to Google Slides if we choose to use that instead.
Yeah, and the way I've structured this presentation is I'm going to do most of the techniques in detail in PowerPoint, but then I am going to go to Google Slides and at a somewhat high level show you how to do those same techniques in Google Slides.
Great, thank you.
It's a lot to cover. It's an ambitious agenda, so hopefully I'll get to everything. All right, so can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
And I have a collection of pictures here in this PowerPoint that I just envision that are a lot of our students. They're on their couch, they have their laptops, they have children, they have things going on. And actually one of my students in one of my classes had a baby on her lap. So I thought that this one picture here of this small child was quite appropriate. So this is just kind of my vision of some of the folks we teach. But again, we're going to take a look at PowerPoint and Google Slides and some tips and techniques. So we're not going to do a deep dive into everything, but just a couple of highlights. So what we have planned for you here is just to answer the question, why use PowerPoint and Google Slides when we have other applications? We'll take a look at some presentation do's and don'ts. We'll take a look at the basics. So one of the things that someone said when they were joining the session, I think it was Olga, she said it just takes a lot of time to build slides. So we'll take a look at templates as a time-saving technique or an approach. And we'll also take a look at the basics of formatting. We'll cover inserting shapes, pictures, links, and videos. Kind of a light touch on animation. And then somewhat of a light touch on presentation tools that are built into PowerPoint. So as you can see here, the PowerPoint is listed 4 times, but at the end, we're going to go over to Google Slides. I'll show you how to get into Google Slides. We'll do a quick tour of some of the different tools. And again, I'll do my best to cover everything that we just covered in PowerPoint in Google Slides. All right. So let's start out with the first agenda item. Why use PowerPoint or Google Slides? What's the benefit? What do you find to be beneficial? Like, what's the driver? Why would you even bother? And you can just jump in if you want to just open your mics and share.
I find that, go ahead.
I had a new student. We were working for a number of weeks without a textbook. And of course, remotely. So in order to share a page or something that we needed to learn, it had to be visible to both of us. And so hence I, started using the slides.
Right. And why not? Why Microsoft Word? Why would you opt for slides?
I had attended some in-services that Sid had given to us on slides. and that's where my familiarity was.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there anything, any characteristic or benefit that you find when you're using PowerPoint or Google Slides over, let's say, Microsoft Word?
I like the slides because I can move things around very easily.
Yeah.
And if I have to adjust either the size or if I want to point to something on the screen, I just find it's very helpful.
Yeah.
And I
Anything
can
else?
customize it to whatever we're studying, whether it's vocabulary, and match up the pictures. And I just find it's a very good tool because I really don't work from a book per se.
Right. All right, great. Anything else, Georgina?
Yeah, Lisa, I use PowerPoint presentations to put more visual things or topics that we are talking about. And for me, it's more nice to put then, you know, photographs or pictures or images about the topic that we are talking about. I like it.
Yeah. And I agree with what you were sharing, because I think that PowerPoint, the ease of use, the ease of including really, like my little owl here, visually interesting, engaging, impactful images, I find is so much easier in PowerPoint than in, let's say, Microsoft Word. And I include Google Slides. It's easier in Google Slides than Microsoft Word. And it's easy to manipulate, modify, and just as you guys were saying. So some of the things I listed here are the engaging visuals, the ability to use animation. So when you're worried that you have too much on the screen and you want to control what is displayed, you can use animation to display one bullet, let's say, at a time. PowerPoint has an annotation tool. So if I wanted to draw on the screen right now with my little pen and, oops, I'm not very good at drawing, as you can see, and circle something, that's built right into PowerPoint. You may know also there's also annotation in Zoom, but you have the ability to annotate, and I'm just going to erase that, in PowerPoint using a PowerPoint tool as well. You could insert links to sites. So if in, let's say, my lesson, I want to take everyone out to my class out to a site to show them something, a website, maybe a game that I've created on another site, I can embed those links just for my ease of use in conducting the lesson. The link is available on a slide, click it, and off I go to the site. I could embed links to videos, and I could use the slides for activities. So if I want to come out, right now I'm in presentation mode, but if I come out of presentation mode, I can type and create activities and type right on the screen. So if, let's say, we're doing a brainstorm on vocabulary, I could type it right onto a slide. So lots
I
of
have a question there.
Yes.
Because I don't think I always put my PowerPoint in slideshow mode, but that's probably a mistake. But am I correct that in slideshow mode, as opposed to just having, I don't know, just somehow going through my slides, I then cannot add material, like add, let's say, write something in? Is that accurate?
Yeah, so when I'm in slideshow mode, the benefit of being in slideshow mode is first, is nothing distracting, right? It's only the slide that my student sees, and animation works in slideshow mode. Animation does not work when I come out, but there are plenty of times when I was tutoring that I would come out of presentation mode so that I can type on the screen because I needed to do both. So I think, you know, however it is, whatever the activity is or purpose, you know, you come in and out of presentation mode as needed.
Okay, thank you.
And sometimes to declutter the screen, because right now you can see the ribbon here at the top of my screen with all the tabs. If I want to hide it, there's this tiny little arrow here. I can click on that, and there's just a little less clutter, a little less to distract the students. Another way to open and close your ribbon is you can double click on any one of the tabs. So I can double click and open the ribbon. I can double click and close the ribbon. So if you find that helpful. Okay, so lots of benefits of using slides and whether they be PowerPoint or Google Slides. All right. So we answered the question, why use PowerPoint and Google Slides? So let's take a look at some presentation do's and don'ts. And what are some of your don'ts? Like, we certainly don't want to have slides that confuse or bore people, like this young man does not look too pleased. But what are some of your like absolute don'ts? Like, oh gosh, please don't create a slide that, what are
Has
some of
too
your-
much on too much on a slide.
Right, so you want to manage the amount of information so it's not too overwhelming. Anybody else have a don't? Anybody else have a rule that you say, you know what, my slides must never,
Look the same. You have to vary the fonts, the colors, content, you know, between a link for music or animation or,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I
something
mean-
that's going to entertain the student at the same time.
yes, varying media, color, graphics, absolutely. If they're all white backgrounds with some text, that's perfectly acceptable, because a lot of tutors just don't have the time, right, to add a lot of color and graphics. But you do want to mix it up, right? You do want to have enough different and engaging elements. So I agree. So here's a couple of slides. Is this a do or a don't?
Don't.
I think don't.
Don't. Way too much information. That's a definite don't. How about this one?
Ah.
It's hard to read.
Hard to read. Terrible first of all, terrible animation, and there's no contrast here. You can't really read it, right? So that's a don't. And then terrible animation on this one. And here's just a couple of tips though, as far as the colors that you use. You can see that the best contrast is dark on light. Okay contrast, light on dark, but you don't want light on light, so you don't want yellow on a white background. And then there's some contrasts that hurt your eyes, you know, like this green and blue and the red and yellow. So just try to avoid anything that's disturbing visually, and that's kind of just, you know, common sense. So you want to keep things simple. You want to limit bullets and text. Sometimes though, because we are teaching virtually and there's a lot of things, you know, a lot of good information we want to convey, sometimes you do have a slide with a lot of text on it, and maybe you can't avoid it. Maybe it's a short story. So there are exceptions, but you do want to keep your slides somewhat clean and manageable. And if you have to split text across two slides, just so that no one slide is too dense, of course, you can do that too. You want to use high quality graphics, use animation with a purpose. So animation for the sake of animation, just to have something fly across the screen, sometimes is confusing. But so if it has a purpose though, animation is great. And using videos and audios, like Olga was saying, you want some variety, right? So that you want to, and you may want to be careful with the stream. Oh, and Ellen was adding that for colorblind students, you want to be careful because they may have trouble seeing the color blue. Thanks for sharing that, Ellen. All right.
What do you mean by high quality graphics?
If you have something on the screen that is not a sharp image, if it's pixelated, if it was maybe a very small image and you stretch it on the screen so everyone can see it, but it gets distorted. So just
Okay.
thank you for asking that, but just something that's kind of a crisp, clear image.
Okay.
Okay, so. All right, those were some do's and don'ts. So now let's move on to the fun stuff, to go to PowerPoint and take a look at some of the basics, and we'll take a look at templates and some basic formatting. So how many of you have used templates before? Okay, are you using templates for your tutoring sessions? Have you? So what's the advantage of a template? Why are you using templates?
It's an easy way to get started on the
Yeah.
slide.
Right. So Microsoft has templates and Google Slides has templates. And I have to say both are pretty impressive, just the quality of some of the templates. And a template will give you graphics, color, a particular font style. And both Microsoft and Google not only have templates, but they also have something called a theme. And the themes are preset with color, graphics, and font styles. The templates will additionally give you suggestions on, you know, how to present ideas, and they go a little bit deeper. And a theme is really just at a somewhat high level, the graphics and the color and the fonts. All right. The other thing I would strongly suggest, and many of you may already do this, is create your own template. So I probably invested hours in creating my very first lesson, deciding on the look and what's going to be engaging and what should I do and how best this, that, the other. But over time, what I came up with was a template so that at the end of lesson 1, I would be able to save that file as lesson 2 and then go through and reuse as many slides as I could, so that I could start saving time by reusing slides that I created for activities, that I created for sections and for vocabulary, etc. So start with a Google, I would suggest, that's just a tip, it's not a given, but if you start with either Microsoft or Google's templates, modify it, create your own, and then reuse your own lesson from one lesson to the next. All right. So basically, this is what I was just saying. So find a template, make it your own, and then do a save as, and just reuse that and reuse as many slides as you can as a time saver. Duplicate slides as often as you can, and copy and paste graphics from one presentation to the next, again, just to save time. All right. So before I do a demo, let me just show you a couple of my slides from when I was tutoring English. I've also tutored and taught our students how to use Excel and Microsoft Word. But when I was tutoring English, these are some of my slides. So reusing slides is a great time saver. So I would create a welcome slide and just keep using it and editing it from lesson 11 to lesson 12 to lesson 13. I reused activity slides and just edit them with new information so that I could save time. So once I started working in the Ventures book, this became my welcome slide, and I would just update the slide for the next lesson with the different, the lesson numbers. For some special occasions, I would create some welcome slides that, had different graphics. For the New Year's, I created this, but for the most part, I used this for almost every lesson once I started using Ventures. How many of you are using the Ventures workbooks? No? Okay, only some of you. So you can come up obviously with some other welcome and just create a standard. I created a standard pretty much to review homework. So I use a lot of slides to keep the students on track and create sections within my lesson. So welcome, sometimes I would do an agenda, but then I would move right into reviewing the homework from the prior lesson. So I would have a slide and then we would transition to review the homework. Here's another homework review. Because the Ventures, if you're using Ventures, you have a student's book and a workbook. I had a standard slide that for a particular lesson, I would just keep reusing it and just update the page number. The same here for the workbook, and just update the page numbers as I went from week to week. Almost every week we practice pronunciation. I had a slide for that. We had vocabulary and adding words to the students' personal dictionary. If you happen to be doing that, this was a slide that I would transition to. I created a very simple table for vocabulary, and every week I would delete the old words, put in some new words, right? So I was reusing the slide. I had a placeholder for short stories. Now, if I was doing something like questions or true or false where I wanted to type on the page, of course, I would have to come out of the, oops, sorry, I went to the wrong one. My apologies. I have 3 PowerPoint slides going. I would come out of the presentation and just type true or false. And I had a placeholder for a wrap up so that it would also, again, keep me on track. So at a particular point, maybe, 10 minutes before the end, go to a wrap up, review what we covered, go over the homework that for the following week. I created a slide like this to introduce myself to the students, and you can see the layout of the pictures. And then if you were doing vocabulary and you wanted to insert fruit in the same slide, different pictures, but say it's a time saver just to keep reusing certain slides. And then I had a couple of goodbye slides to use at the end. And same thing with animation. So here I have an animated slide where the students would see something like this. Is this past or present? Is this, and so on. But if I wanted to use this for another activity where maybe you had to read a sentence and determine if, let's say, a verb was used properly in that sentence, I could use the same slide and just edit this and use it for an entirely different activity and purpose. Again, reusing to save time. So it's engaging, it has a little bit of color, it has a little bit of animation, and it becomes a reusable element.
I have a question, but if everybody else knows how to do it, you don't have to do it. I actually don't know how to do animation, but if everyone else does, we can wait on that and I can try to learn it myself.
No, I'm going to cover that. So
Okay.
last thing I want to show as a reusable, which I used extensively. And all you need to do is create one of these slides, like a fill in the blank. And when this is in presentation mode, the student gets to answer, and I had the answer boxed in, the correct answer, with animation. And so it goes, I purchased a bag of potatoes. And if I wanted to edit this for a different activity, all I have to do is change the sentence, right? I have 3, oops. Oops. If I could type, it would help. And you have another activity just like that. So, and I use this for fill in the blanks. I use this for select the synonym for the underlined word. And it's kind of a bland, very simplistic slide, but I found just by duplicating the slide and modifying it from one lesson to the next, it served me really well as a time saver for practice. Okay. All right, so that was just to kind of give you a taste for where I'm headed. And now I'm going to take you back to so we just took a look at a couple of sample slides. And here I want to go to Microsoft, open a template, and then we'll start getting into the actual step-by-step of how to do certain techniques, right? So when you want to start with a template and you're in PowerPoint, you want to go to File, New. And when you're in File New, or if you just open PowerPoint on your screen and you don't have it open anywhere else, I'm looking at an image here that's slightly different than when you open PowerPoint for the first time and you don't have any other slide presentation open. But in either case, what you're going to find, whether you click on New or you open PowerPoint from, you know, a closed position, is that you have access to a blank presentation, which is kind of a lot of work, right? I have to add color, I have to add graphics, I have to add a lot to it. If I scroll down here a little bit, you can see that it says I can search for online templates and themes. And the searches, some of the suggested searches are categories. So I can click on education. And it comes up with a whole bunch of gorgeous, right, presentations to choose from. And I think, as I mentioned, what took me the longest when I first created my template for my student was just finding the right look and feel, something I was comfortable with, something that was not too dark, that, you know, colors that I felt were right and manageable. So this could take you a little bit of time, but there's so many wonderful things to choose from. And you'll notice down here that these are categories of templates like education, but adjacent to that is a group called themes. So an education template might have some suggestions for an agenda and, you know, slides that you can kind of modify in advance. And a theme is really strictly color, graphics, and a font style. And these are a lot simpler, but I feel like if you don't have a very specific purpose, and the template, let's say, doesn't match, you know, your, you know, purpose, you're better off with a theme because you have greater flexibility, because you're just really looking at color, graphics, font, etc. So there's some really fun looking things, cool looking things. Some of them are very simple and straightforward. And of course, you can always add your own graphics and additional color and to them. Every theme or template that you select, you can change the font, you can change the color, you can change any element of it. But here I'm just going to select this one, and I'm going to select just a really simple option here. Not every theme has additional options when you open it up. This one does. And I'm just going to select and click create. So what I've just launched here is a theme. I have the color, the font style, right? And this one really doesn't have graphic elements on the slide. Some do. But now I'm in kind of start mode, right? I want to start building a presentation. So in this session with you guys, what I'm going to focus on is the Home tab, the Insert tab, and the Animations tab. That's where we're going to be taking a look at some of the features. So when I'm on my Home tab, well, there's a couple of things I want to point out to you. This section here, Slides, is where you can come to add a new slide. And you'll notice there's a new slide button. And if I point to the top of the button, it turns gray. If I point to the bottom, it turns gray. And this is actually a split button. It does two different things. If I click on the top, I get a slide that Microsoft thinks as a user that I may want. So if I click on the top, I get this slide. It's called, this actually has a name. It's called Title with Content. Title on the top, content on the bottom. If I don't, I'm going to undo that. And if I don't want that slide, if I click on the bottom portion, what that will always open for you is a listing of layouts, so that there is title and content, section header, comparison, which has sections laid out, you know, where you have two side-by-side sections, title only, blank, and you have more options, right? So here I can make my selection, and maybe I want a section header. Okay, so that's one of the areas on the Home tab to point out. The other is the font. How many of you feel really comfortable formatting fonts? Would anybody benefit from a review? No, okay. So when I'm on my first slide, and let's say this is lesson 10, and maybe I want to type my name on the first slide. The first thing you'll notice is font's kind of plain, it's kind of small. And if I want to change the font, I actually don't have to highlight it. All I have to do is click on this is known as a placeholder, this box that I'm moving around, it's a placeholder for your text. I just click on the outer edge of the placeholder and I can come up to my Home tab, come to the font group, and I can change the style. I can change the font size. And I can do the same for my name if I want to make it a little bit larger. And I can make changes to the color. And maybe I'll just make it a dark. And those are pretty simple changes. If I go to the next slide, and I decide that I would like to use where it says click to add title, but I don't want this other placeholder, I could either just leave it there. And when I'm in presentation mode, they actually don't show up. But if I find that I personally like to delete them because if I'm not in presentation mode, I think it's distracting. But if I just click on the outer edge, right, of the placeholder, I can press my delete key and get rid of it. And maybe this first section is going to be homework review. All right. And of course, I can insert pictures and make this a lot more interesting looking than it is. All right. Any questions so far on just selecting a layout? And
how do you access the upper part of the slide?
Say that again?
How do you access the upper part of the slide? Is that where you're putting your text?
When you say the upper part of the slide, you mean this here?
No, the colored part.
Oh, so this is preset and it's part of the template. I can change the color if that's what you're asking. If you don't like
No, I
that,
wanted to know if you can type in there.
Oh, so what if I did want to add text there? Does anybody know? What would I do?
You
Text
can
box?
click on a text box
Exactly.
in Google Slides anyhow.
Yes, and it's the same. And so there's, a lot that is either the same or very similar in the two applications. But my Home tab is where I started. But when I click on my Insert tab, I can come over here to insert a text box. So I can insert pictures, I can insert shapes, and I can actually type inside of a shape. But if I just strictly want to type text, I click on text box. Now nothing happened, right? But if I bring my cursor down onto the slide, you see that little cross? Now all I need to do is click with my left mouse, drag, and I can start typing. And then, of course, I can modify the font just to make it easier to read. Start out by making it larger. I can change the color. And then, of course, I could move it around. Whether it's a text box or a placeholder for text that Microsoft provides us, when we want to move them, we want to click on the outer border. And whenever you see a four-headed arrow, can you guys see that? It's kind of tiny on my screen, the four-headed arrow. Whenever you see a four-headed arrow, you can click and drag, and you can move it any place on the screen. These little circles around the border allow you to size something. They're like handles, and you can use those to make a text box smaller. And the same is true with a placeholder. You can click and drag and change the height, the width of the text box. All right. So inserting a text box, you can insert as many text boxes as that you would need. If you needed to insert another one in another location on the slide, you can just continue adding. Okay. So that is a very basic tour of PowerPoint and managing a slide by inserting text, modifying text, and inserting a text box. So
Diane, what do you mean by a placeholder? What does that mean?
these guys here that Microsoft provides us with the words click to add,
Uh-huh.
whether it's a small box, a large one, if you click and the text disappears, that's a placeholder for your text that Microsoft provides us.
Hmm.
And when you want to insert your own, it's called a text box. So it's just
Oh,
basically does the same thing with a little bit of a difference. This one has some guidance. It says click to add text, and a text box you just create and start typing. But otherwise, the behavior of these are basically the same. All right. Any other questions just around the basics, navigating around PowerPoint, modifying text? All right, this is basic stuff for you guys, I can tell by your faces. All right, so that was the basics. So let's say I've now created a file that I've used for my first lesson, and I want to save it. Of course, I'm going to do File. And I think I'm just going to save this right on my desktop. And click Save. The next time that I want to use this, I would open it and I would do a File, Save As, and save it as the next lesson. All right. So I'm going to now go to an actual template, one that I was using when I was tutoring English. And I'm going to go to lesson 12. So this was a lesson that I taught. And obviously the lesson is over, and I would sit down then in the coming week to prepare lesson 13. So I would open up lesson 12. I would go to File, Save As, change the name. So I'm creating a copy of the lesson and click Save. Then I would come in here and keep the welcome and simply change the lesson number. In my process, what I did next was always review the homework. So I would come in here and make any changes to the homework review slide. Then I would move on if I was using ventures, and I would change this to whatever I had planned. Maybe we were going to go over or start with page 10. And then I had these sections, and I liked this slide, and I kept using it over and over again to introduce a section. So let's say instead of adjective order, we were going to take a look at, nouns. And then I would proceed to the next slide and say, can I use this? Maybe I can use this table. Maybe I just need to edit a couple of things, or maybe this slide is not going to serve me well at all for my new lesson. So I could come over here to the navigation pane. Do you guys know that this is called the navigation pane on the left, where you can navigate from slide to slide? And if I right click on a slide, I have lots of different options. And if I decide I would like to delete it, delete the slide is one of my options. If I wanted to, let's say I love this slide and I can use it maybe 2 or 3 times in the presentation, I could also duplicate the slide. So I could duplicate, and now I have 2 identical slides, and one I could modify for some other purpose, or I can simply right click and delete.
Can you change the order of the slides?
Yeah, great question. So that navigation pane, I can click and
Okay.
drag to a new position. Okay. There are other ways to, if you have a lot of slides, where you may want to go to view slide sorter, and view slide sorter gives you another place where you have maybe slightly easier access to all of your slides, and you can maybe more easily reorder and resequence things. But the slide sorter is a great one if you have extensive manipulation and reordering. And that was on the view tab, view slide sorter. Okay, so I would come in and I could start making the changes in preparation for this lesson. Decide which slides I want to keep, which ones I want to edit, maybe which ones I want to duplicate. So I can right click duplicate, right click delete, and then certainly I can select any slide and just simply make edits. All right. So, oh, the last thing just to point out is that if you have certain graphics that you find are, you know, really helpful to you and you want to reuse them, and you've already gone through the trouble, let's say, of finding graphics, I'm sure you know that you can just simply copy and paste any graphic into a new slide. So if I wanted to use, let's say, this graphic and a new slide, I could insert a new slide from the Home tab, clicking the bottom portion, choosing my layout, and then I can come here and I can select and copy. And I'm assuming you all know copy paste commands, and then just reuse graphics for another purpose. Now, if any of you are as lucky as I am, because I'm working in Office 365, which I have to say, I'm a huge fan of Microsoft, and I may be alone in that, but they have this feature in Office 365 where you can see over here on the side, when I paste a graphic onto a slide, it makes some additional suggestions on layout so that you can go from a really plain looking slide to something that has a little visual interest. So design ideas, if you're in Office 365 or if you have 2019, you can access that. I'll tell you though, Google Slides has a very similar feature, which is great. All right, so time savers, create your template, save as, right, your lesson from one week to the next, and make edits and reuse as many slides as you can. Okay. Any questions so far?
I just wanted to ask, and I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to jump off soon. I don't want to miss the animations part. I'm wondering if we're going to be getting to that sometime soon.
Yeah, actually, why don't I just go ahead and do that right now?
That would be great. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, sure. I wouldn't want you to miss out. So I was going to create a slide to animate, but instead, let me just select, I guess I could just select this one. So I had mentioned that really simple activity, right? Fill in the blank. So if I want to animate a little box to surround the correct response, all I have to do is go to Insert and Shapes. And I want to insert a rectangle. And I want to click and drag the rectangle. And the rectangle is blocking my view, right? It's a colored in, as it has fill color, shape fill. And if I don't want any fill, all I have to do is right click, come up here to fill, and tell it that I want no fill. And then for the shape outline, I can right click and go to outline and maybe make that a brighter color. And maybe also, if I'm on outline, I have all these colors. So I right click for outline, I right click for fill. But outline has two things. It has color and weight. So to make something stand out a little bit more, I can change the weight. All right, so now if I'm in presentation mode, it's not going to help me because it's circling the correct answer. And if I want to animate it so that it shows up on the screen after the student responds, I have to first click on anything I want to animate. This can be a picture, it could be a word, it could be a little rectangle. And if you want to animate it, click on what you want to animate and go to the animations tab. And here, it looks like there are only a few animations: appear, fade, fly in, etc. But if I click on this little down arrow, I have a pretty extensive list of animations. And you'll notice they are categorized by what they do. Entrance means they come on the screen. The animation is they're not on the screen when you start. They show up on the screen when the animation's done. Emphasis is it's on the screen and then it wiggles or jumps or does something for emphasis and stays on the screen. If I scroll down, I have exit, which means the object is on the screen when you start and then it leaves when you animate. So here I actually, of course, would like an entrance. I can choose something simple, fancy, and I'm just going to use this wipe. So now when I'm in presentation mode and the student responds and we want to look at the correct response, all I had to do was tap my down arrow on my keyboard when I'm in presentation mode and the animation executes. If I say, you know what, I don't want animation, I click on the object, go back to the animations tab, and notice in the menu there's none. So I can remove and apply. And it's just that easy. I can animate a picture. Let me see if I have any pictures here I can animate. I don't think I would animate this picture, but if I want to, I could. So I can say maybe I want this to grow and turn. So when I present this slide and press my down arrow, it animates on the screen. And I'm going to actually take the animation off by going back to none. So
just a quick question. So you have to know ahead of time then what on your slides are animated. So as you're executing the presentation, you either have to have notes to yourself or know it well enough to know, okay, if I want this picture, I need to press my down arrow because it's an animation. There's nothing that gives you a clue. Everything, when you're in presentation mode, everything you're seeing, your students are seeing as well.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. You could always, maybe put a tiny little graphic in the corner of a slide. That'll be your cue until you become comfortable with, using animation. But, and animations could be far more complex than what I just showed you. You could have things that fly into the screen and then fly off. You could have many different animations that are executed in a particular sequence. But in its simplest form, this is the way I tend to use it for my tutoring slides, is for something as simple as this, where a rectangle appears on the screen.
Lisa.
Yes.
Lisa, I have a question. Can you use animation to animate words too, not just images or pictures, but also words?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I wanted to, like this box has this list of these words. If I wanted, let's say I wanted them to animate, I could have them animate. And when you're animating words or a list, especially, after you select the animation, which I just selected wipe, to the right of that is effect options. And if you want one line at a time, you want to choose by paragraph. So maybe I want them to animate from the top and I want them to come in by paragraph. When I'm in slide presentation mode, we can focus on one question at a time. So when you're animating words, once again, apply your animation, but then look to the right and look for by paragraph if you want one bullet or one line at a time.
And again, you're pressing the down arrow each time to get each sentence to appear.
Yeah.
Is that the same on Google Slides, the down arrow?
Yes. Yep. You can use your down arrow and page down as well. And you can also simply click on your screen. And if I click on the screen, it's just your mouse click. I'm pointing at my screen, click my mouse, click my mouse, click my mouse. Okay, so animation, really easy. Select what you want, choose your animation. And then if it's words and you want them to come in one line at a time, choose by paragraph. Okay, any other questions on animation? All righty. So let's say I'm in my lesson 13 and I want to add maybe some vocabulary words around the seasons. And I'm going to use this just to kind of build a slide from scratch. And I'm going to go to my home tab, the bottom portion of new slide. I'm going to get all of my layouts. These are called layouts. And I'm just going to build a slide from scratch. So I'm going to choose blank. And I'm going to use my insert tab to show you inserting text box we already saw, but we're also going to insert pictures. So if I come over here to insert, I could start out with a text box. And let's say we're going to take a look at the vocabulary for the 4 seasons. Don't like that font because it's really small, so I'm going to make it much larger. And I'm going to start out, let's say, with winter. So I want to use a picture. So I can go to insert, pictures. And when you're in Google Slides, the language is insert images. But when I click on PowerPoint, it's insert pictures. I have options here. This device means I have a picture for winter, which I don't. If you have a new version of PowerPoint like I do, you have stock images. But I usually just go to online pictures, and it just gives me such a tremendous, just sheer volume of some gorgeous pictures to choose from. If I click on online pictures, there she is. I can then search for, just with a keyword, winter. And here are some really beautiful pictures to choose from. And I'm just going to choose this sunny, snowy day. I click on the image that I want to insert, and then I click on insert. Now the picture will usually come in at a size that is unmanageable. And you can see over here on the right, I have all these great ideas, but I'm not going to use any of these design ideas because I'm going to just build it from scratch. So this huge image needs to be brought down to a manageable size. So these little dots around the border, these sizing handles, I can click and drag on any corner and bring this down to a manageable size. Click and drag it with that four-headed arrow and place it on the slide. Now I'm going to go look for insert picture, online picture. And this time I want to look for, I have some strange glitch here where my search field doesn't show up unless I do all these gyrations. But I want to now look for spring. And make a selection. And I'm not going to be picky just for the sake of time. Bring that down to size. And you guys probably know this, but when you click and drag on a corner, you maintain the aspect ratio so that your height and width of your photo are maintained and you don't, and the image doesn't get distorted. If you click and drag, you know, on the top or on a side, you'll end up distorting the image. And let's say here I want to now add some words. So I'm going to go back to insert text box, click and drag and type winter. And then I'm going to go insert text box. I could also copy and paste the text box I just created, and I can type in spring. And I'm going to change the font here for these two because they're way too small. Maybe I'll even make them bold. And there you go. So if I was presenting this, what I might want to do is animate the words so that we can use pictures for, you know, vocabulary, let's say. So if I want to animate this little text box, I want to select it. Go to the animations tab, and maybe I'll just have it fly in. And maybe I'll do the same with spring. Click on the border for spring to select the little text box, and I'll have it fly in. So now when I'm presenting this, I have winter and spring. And you saw how quickly I did that. So PowerPoint can be labor intensive. But let's say if I wanted to do the next two seasons, what am I going to do? I'm going to right click on this slide and I'm going to duplicate it. And then I'm going to type in summer and autumn or fall. And now watch this trick. If you've ever tried to replace a picture, and you first delete it, and then you go to insert and you go and you insert another picture, then you have to size the picture and all of that. When you want to replace a picture, if you right click on the picture and say change, and now I'm going to search for summer. Notice how this picture is going to sit in the same footprint as the other picture without all the fuss and bother of sizing. So once again, all you have to do is right click, change picture from online. So I'm going to go back online and I'm going to type in select the picture, click insert. A little bit of a delay. And this one actually is a little bit a different. It's the original had a more of a landscape sizing, so it didn't fit the same height, but you'll notice it didn't fill the whole slide either, so it required less manipulation. Now I duplicated this slide, right? I right-clicked and I selected duplicate. When I did that, I actually duplicated the animation. So I now just saved myself time because now when I'm in presentation mode, these are already animated. I don't have to fuss with that either. So duplicating slides, great way to save time. And you might have, you know, a series of slides with professions. Get that first slide down, you know, exactly the way you want it, duplicate it. The animations will duplicate, you can change your pictures, and you can just move a lot more quickly as you build out your presentation. Okay, so we inserted text boxes, we inserted pictures, we did animation. Now let's take a look at inserting video. So I'm going to insert, I'm going to go to Home tab, and I'm going to insert. So this is going to be a video about the seasons. So the lengthiest part of, let me just move something here, sorry. The lengthiest part of of setting up a video is finding the video you want to use, right? Going out to YouTube, looking around, searching. And I found this cute little video that is seasons, and these people, these little cartoon characters, talk about their favorite season. So once I have the video, I can copy the URL, and I can just highlight it, right click, and copy it. And once I have the URL, I can go back to my presentation, and I can insert, right? We insert pictures, shapes, and now I can insert a video all the way over here on the right. And again, I have many choices. This device assumes I have a video on this PC. I do not. I don't want to use a stock video. If you have stock videos, though, they're very cool. You can check them out. But I want an online YouTube video. So if I have the URL, I can click online video, paste it in the field. There's my little video, and click insert. Now this is so tiny. I'm going to stretch it. And it gets a little pixelated, but when I play it, and I can play this in presentation mode, or I can play it in just normal mode. And when I click on it, it becomes a lot, the image is a lot clear, more crisp and clear. And I could make this even larger. So back to insert, what I did was first I went to YouTube, copy the URL, and then insert video, online video. All right. And then lastly, you can, of course, insert a link. So I have, in the past, created a game at this site called WordWall, and this was a vocabulary matching game. And I can also just insert a link. So if I have something prepared in advance, copy the URL, go to my PowerPoint, Home tab, new slide. And let's say this is WordWall. Oops. And now I want to insert, oops, a link. I have to be in a text box or a placeholder to insert a link. So I can go to Insert tab, click on Link, click on Insert Link. And here I can paste. And now I've actually turned the word WordWall into a link, but you can type anything. You could type, vocabulary matching game. And when you click on whatever you typed, it will take you out to that site. and you're ready to play the game.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And embedding these in my PowerPoint just eliminates some fuss and bother of navigating back and forth. I mean, you still have to go to the link, obviously, when it opens, takes you to your browser, but you can just have these things ready in advance. And I can certainly make this slide a lot more interesting looking. All right, so questions. We inserted pictures. I did a quick little insert of a shape, but just want to point out that there are all kinds of things here, arrows and circles and ovals. There's my link. And way over here on the right is video. Questions on any of the insertions?
Yeah, could you go over, please, the order for link? I'm not sure what, once you got the address, where it is.
Yeah, no worries. So in order to use link, I need a text box or a placeholder. So I'm going to
Okay.
insert a text box, and then I'm going to make this look a little bit better. I'm going to say, click to go to word wall. And I can highlight that text, go to insert, link,
Okay. I see.
and then insert link. Now you see at the top here, text to display says click to go to word wall.
Mhm.
And down on the bottom is the address, the URL.
Okay.
And now I have the link, and I need to make it larger and change the color because right now it just looks pretty bad. Oops. And now that link is clickable. When I'm in presentation mode, all I have to do is look for the little hand and click. When I'm not in presentation mode, it tells me I need to use my control key and click to go to the site. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions on insert pictures, shapes, links, or video?
What did you say you need to do if you're not in presentation mode? You said something like go to control something or other.
Yeah, when you point to it, you see the little pop-up says control plus click to follow the link.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not in presentation mode, so I'm going to press my control key and then click my left mouse. And that's how I go. When you're in presentation mode, you just click. But it's a little fussy when you're not in presentation mode.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right, so let me go back to my agenda and just check to see where we are. So we have covered inserting pictures. We did animation. So now the PowerPoint presentation tools. I just wanted to point out to you, if you are in presentation mode and you want to use the little pen and draw on the screen, in the lower left corner, when you're in presentation mode, you have these little, I call them, they're like ghost-like icons. And one of them is a picture of a pen. And you can see here, I have a screenshot of it. But when I click on the pen, I get to choose a color. Maybe I want to use a pen in blue. I can click on pen. And once I have that selected, I can draw on the screen, write on the screen. And depending on your skill, you can, I'm not very good at writing with my mouse, but you can certainly circle things, point to things, and you can also switch the pen to a laser pointer and just highlight things as you go. And those are tools that are built into PowerPoint. When I want to get out of presentation mode, I'm just going to press my escape key, and my escape key is on my keyboard, and it's going to say, do I want to keep or discard the annotations? And as I mentioned earlier, if I keep them, they actually become, right, like a an insertion of a picture. And if I want to delete them at a later date, I can just select it and press my delete key and get rid of the annotations. So if you did something really creative with your class and you wanted to save it, you certainly can escape, save your annotation. Okay. So we only have 15 minutes left, but I want to go over, and I can certainly stay longer if you have any Google Slides questions, but I want to go over to Google Slides now. Don't want to miss a chance to show you this because it's really pretty cool. So if you have Gmail, you have a Google account. If you have Gmail, you have a Google account, you have Google Slides. So all you have to do if you have, and by the way, I have a Gmail account and I don't use it. I have Outlook. But the Gmail account gives me access to some other things like Google Slides. So even if you don't think you want a Gmail account, you don't want another email account, I would create one just so you can get to some of these other cool things. So I can log into my Gmail. And from Gmail, I can look for this little, it looks like a Rubik's Cube. It's called Google Apps. Can you see where I'm pointing in the upper right corner? And when I click on that, these are all the apps. And some come with your Google account, some don't. But among them is Google Slides, and Google Slides does come with your Google account, as well as Google Sheets, which is the Excel. It's Google's Excel version. But here's Slides. And when I open up Google Slides, you're going to see this basically the same thing you see in PowerPoint. It says I can start a new presentation as a blank. Remember seeing that? Here's a template gallery. And I can look through all of these really slick, professional looking presentations. And they are templates. So if I open them, just like PowerPoint, I can add, delete, edit to my heart's content. So these are templates. But if I say, you know, I really don't want to commit to a template, maybe I'll just start with a blank. I'm going to open up a blank presentation. There is something that immediately opens up on the right side of the screen. And remember I said I thought I was so lucky in PowerPoint because I had those design ideas. Well, this area here, these themes, is kind of like that. I can go through here and I could say, I don't want to commit to a template, but maybe I want this theme. So I've just selected a font style, color, right? And after I've made my theme selection, you can see here I have a little toolbar. And the very first thing is a plus sign and a down arrow. And the down arrow are my layouts. So I can now start building a presentation and adding slides from here. So themes is one way to go, templates is the other. I would suggest that if you're in Google Slides, create your own presentation that you can use and just copy from one lesson to the next. And a couple of things that are a little bit different though in Google Slides is one, there's no save, right? When I'm in PowerPoint, I have to click save and I can ensure that my changes are being saved. In Google Slides, anything you do is automatically saved. So here at the top, I can title this, right? So I can title this, maybe I'm going to call this lesson 1. And you see where I am in the upper left-hand corner. It's being saved to my Google Drive, which is like a folder in the sky, right? It's a folder on a server that Google maintains. And let's say I just created a beautiful presentation for lesson 1, and I want to use it for, oh my gosh, for lesson 2. We don't have file save as in Google. Instead, we have make a copy. So let's say again, maybe I have 20 slides I just created for lesson 1. I want to use it for lesson 2. I can make a copy of the entire presentation and it will replicate it and allow me to go in, edit, add, change anything that I want. And I could then just name it lesson 2 and click OK. And now I have a copy of my template. All right. So assuming I had 20 slides, right, I can go in and I can start editing. So let me show you some more things in Google Slides. So this little toolbar, you can see I can add a new slide. I can add a text box. I can insert images, pictures, right? And just like PowerPoint, when you want to insert an image, I can go to the web and I can insert shapes, which is the next one here, insert shapes. I can insert lines. I can change the color of things. I can put borders around things, border weight. Remember when I made the rectangle and I took out the fill color? Here the word is transparent. You can make something transparent and I can change the weight. Here are my font formatting. What style would I like? What size would I like? And do I want bold, italics, etc.? Now let's say that I wanted to animate this. I can select this text box and I can start looking around. I do not see the word animate. I don't see animate on the menu bar, file, edit, view, insert, nope. Down here on the toolbar. But one of the things I want to bring to your attention is animate is like the last option on the toolbar. And if you don't see it, click the 3 dots for more, and there it is. So on Google, it's a little hidden away, but I can click animate. And one of the things to be careful of here is that this little panel opens up. And the first thing it has here at the top is slide transition. Down here you have object animation. So this one panel on the right does 2 things. The top creates animation from slide to slide, right? Those are your transitions. We don't want that. But down here, object animations will animate a picture, animate words, etc. So here I want to click on the underneath here, object animation, and I want to choose. So I'm clicking here, it says fade in. I don't want fade in. I want, fly from the left. And click play to test it. So now when I click, it flies from the left. So animation, again, click on your object, same thing in PowerPoint. In Google, click on the 3 dots if you don't see the word animate anywhere, and there it is. And then on your motion panel, you have transitions and object animations. Okay. I'm going to add another slide. And let's say we want to do that seasons again. We want to do the seasons. If I want to insert a picture here, just like I did in PowerPoint, I could either go to this little graphic. It looks like mountains, right? That's image. I could also go to insert image. So there's some redundancy where you have little tools, right? The picture of the mountains or your insert tab, and they do the same thing. Insert image from here or insert image from here. But if I go to search from the web, I can start out with winter. And you'll notice that I'm typing here. The right panel becomes the place where searches and settings are housed. Oh, what happened there? I just want winter. And here I have, right, gorgeous photos to choose from. And I can select it, and you see way down at the bottom, insert. And now I'll have to size it and place it. And then I can just type winter here. And then if I want to search for another picture, and this time I'm going to type in spring, and so on it goes. And if you hear my cat, I apologize. She's, for some reason, she's getting cranky. And now she's walking across my screen. All right, and same thing here. I can change the font size, right? Because this is way too small. So when I was telling you how impressed I was with Google Slides, here's the thing that I like the best. So I can do all the same things I did in PowerPoint, right? I have pictures and shapes, etc. But if I click on Explore down here on the kind of like the bottom right corner below the slide, on the right, it says, yeah, you did a nice job, but what do you think of some of these? And it actually will take your maybe not so graphically interesting slide and try to improve upon it. So it gives you ideas and things you can do to change it. Now, this might be way too small for my purpose, right? If I was doing vocabulary for winter and spring, but just check out Explore. The next time you think your slide looks a little plain, and see what Google Slides comes up with. And every time it's a little bit different, like the layout might be just a little bit, different. If you're, I know in PowerPoint, if you overload a slide with graphics, it stops giving you ideas. Here, I don't know in Google Slides if there is a limitation. So if you have 5 things, on a screen, images, if it still tries to provide you ideas, but Explore is the button. Okay. How about this? I bet you guys know this. If you had a friend who had a really great PowerPoint presentation created in PowerPoint and you don't have PowerPoint, can you get it into Google Slides and edit it in Google Slides? The answer is yes. So if I have a really neat PowerPoint presentation that someone sent me and I say, I'd love to use that, but I don't have PowerPoint. What you can do is, and you would really have to have some familiarity with Google Drive. So lessons and things that you create, I said, are automatically saved in Google Drive. And you can go to, right, that little application. It looks like a Rubik's Cube, and open up Google Drive. I have mine open here. And if I have a really nice PowerPoint presentation, let's say in an email that somebody sent me, I can open up Google Drive. Go to that email, and you see this is the PowerPoint. I can click and drag it and drop it right into Google Drive. And you can see here that it's uploading in the corner. And then I can open a PowerPoint in Google Slides.
Lisa, it's the same when someone send you an by PowerPoint presentation by WhatsApp, right? You can click on it and share with you put in your Google Drive, correct? Is correct?
In WhatsApp?
is because the other day I did that. And
Is
my
what-
teacher, yeah, my teacher sent us in WhatsApp the PowerPoint presentation, but
Uh-huh.
I can see in my, well, I don't want to see it on my cell phone, so I just put in a drive, and after that I can see in my own computer, and I can open that.
Right. I don't know WhatsApp. I've never used it, but it sounds like it works the same.
Yeah, it is the same.
Okay. And you'll notice something a little different here. You see that it says .pptx, so it's still trying to be PowerPoint and Google Slides, and I don't really want it to be because it says here that some features are not available, and like I don't like things to be complicated. So what I can do once it's here is I can file, make a copy, not a copy, my apology, file, save as Google Slides. So I'm basically telling it, drop the PowerPoint thing. I'm not worried about that. Just save it as Google Slides. I'm going to lose maybe some animation, maybe a link or two is not going to work. But if a colleague sent it to me and I know I can use a good portion of it, I can add the animation in. I can, make changes once it's here in Google Slides. So you can build it in Google Slides from scratch or import a PowerPoint slide into Google Slides and open it. The other thing too is if you have Gmail and I sent you a PowerPoint, what Gmail will do is try to launch your PowerPoint in Google Slides. So by default, if you're working in Gmail, it'll just take you directly to Google Slides so that you don't have to worry about converting anything. All right, so I would encourage you, if you're in Google Slides, click on these buttons, check them out, see what things will do. If you wanted to change, the background, there's a background button here, and then it says I can choose a color. Oh, sugar, that was a bad one. There's too many graphic layers here. It's not showing the background change. But there are things just to play with. You can change the layout of a slide. You can change the theme of a slide. And you can just kind of play around and find your way through all the different things that you can do. The other thing to point out to you is, and you probably know this from experience with Microsoft, when you select something, the toolbar will change because the toolbar knows, oh, she just selected a text box. She must want to maybe format the text or animate the text or do something with bullets. If I click away from the text, it changes and it now thinks I want to do something with the entire slide, like change the background or the layout. So when you click on things, you'll notice your tools change. All right. Anything while we have, it's just 8:01. If you have any last minute requests or things that you'd like to view or see in Google Slides before we wrap up. All right. So I'm hoping that you guys got something good out of this, something that you can use. The greatest tip that I could offer is reuse as many slides as you can. Create a template and just try to save some time. I think that one of the things that I was surprised about when I first started tutoring was, it takes a while to build the presentations and do all that. And then it just drove me to find as many time-saving techniques as I could find. All right.
Lisa, when you create templates and you want to save them to reuse them, do you name them specifically or you just keep it in your mind, or what do you do there?
That's a great question. So if I wanted to make this a template, I could call it my template. And you can see here, I'm typing in the file name field. And then when I go to, let me just move this out of the way here. And then when I go to, let's say I'm going to start out and prepare my lesson, and I go to Google Slides. You can see here it says My Template. It'll show you some of your recent presentations, and down here you see the name My Template. And if I click on that, it'll open. And I don't want to overwrite it. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to File, Make a Copy. And so that if you know that one particular file is the one you want to use as your template, open it and then go to File, Make a Copy, Entire Presentation. I do have the option though to go to any of my lessons. So if I go to Google Slides from Gmail, let's say, and there's a couple ways, of course, to go to Google Slides, but let's say I go from here. And I see in my recent presentations, lesson 12, and I say, you know, that was a really good presentation. It has a lot of slides I can use. I can open up any lesson and then go to File, Make a Copy of the entire presentation. So naming it My Template, I think, is helpful because then you always know you want to go back to that one. If that was helpful, Olga.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or tips, ideas, things that you want to share before we wrap up?
You gave us lots of good tips. Thank you.
I hope so. And certainly you have my email from the Zoom link that I sent out. If you have any questions, if I went over something too quickly and maybe you want a step-by-step. Oh, here's one last thing. I apologize, and then I'm going to let you go. At the end of my little presentation here, what I did is I collected for you. I screened a bunch of videos and I went out to YouTube, and you can see here that if you wanted a nice tutorial, kind of a high level, 12 minutes long, click the link, go out to, this is much longer, 56 minutes. I did the same thing for PowerPoint. This one says it covers a tour, templates, etc. That's 23 minutes, but here's a 5-minute one on just getting started. Here's 4 minutes on text basics, 3.5 minutes on themes, and so on. So I'll send these review slides to you guys so that you can, if you find it helpful, you can go out to a short YouTube video and review some of these techniques. All right, now I'm really done. So I'll turn it back over to Joe.